The deserts of Barra Magna are a hostile environment. The sand here trickles down like waterfalls. Only a few small thickets and oases to barely keep the entire population fed and hydrated. It was easy to get lost in the desert wastes, each dune similar to the last. Once inside the desert, the residents would lose track of time, some dying of dehydration or starvation. It was a cooler day in the desert than usual, about 25 degrees Celsius, not that it mattered. A distant rumble could be heard, following by a massive dust cloud. What caused this anomaly was a battle between two giant robots about 1,200 kilometers in height. The taller of these two robots was the evil Makuta pterodax, who had succeeded in his plan of taking over the body of Matanui, who is inhabiting the smaller of the two robots, and the prototype of the body Pterodax currently controls.
It's time to finish what I started,
said Pterodax. Indeed, retorted Matanui. It's time to end this here and now. Pterodax threw a punch at Matanui, hitting him in the chest. Due to the size of these behemoths of metal and technology, Matanui could see each blow coming from a mile away. The air slowed down both of their movements, making the battleground more equal. During their fistfight, Matanui spotted a swarm of Rakshi flooding out of Makuta's feet. You've been busy, Pterodax, Matanui observed.
And a lot more where those came from,
replied Pterodax. They continued their fight, and Matanui saw similar faces also exit from Makuta's body, among them being the Toa Nuva wearing unfamiliar armor. Escaping with them was a strange Toa of Light, whom Matanui had never seen before. Matanui barely had a chance to pay much attention to his people below, since his main threat was the Makuta. After many months of fighting, Tahu and the rest of his team were tired. They were at the ankle of the body of the Great Spirit robot, fighting off waves of Rakshi and Skakti just to get a few feet closer to the opening in the robot's foot.
Lua, can you give us a means of passage?
Asked Tahu.
Way ahead of you,
replied Liwa as he let out a maelstrom of air and displaced Rocky and Skakti alike, giving the Toa Nuva a way out of the robot they had lived in for the last 100,000 years.
Hold on to your masks,
bantered Pohatu as he shared his Kanohi Kakama's mask power to his Toa allies.
This is our only chance. Let's go!
The Toa sped out of the robotic body and felt the first taste of sunlight since the Makuta pterodax took over Matanui's body.
Matanui, it feels good to feel sunlight on my armor again,
said Pohatu when he deactivated his mask power.
Bask in the sunlight later,
spouted Gali.
There are other beings on that dune over there.
Pohatu nodded, and he and Gali made their way over to meet the people on the dune spectating the battle going on in the valley below. As Liwa was about to fly over and greet the people of the planet, he stopped and grabbed his head. He felt a massive headache and shut his eyes. When his headache subsided, his normally green eyes turned red. Onua saw this and flew towards Liwa.
Are you all right, brother?
Asked Onua with concern. Liwa shook his head and his eyes turned back to his normal green.
Yes, brother. I'm sure fine.
Onua sighed in relief.
Good. Let's take care of these Rakshi, yeah?
Onua suggested. Liwa nodded.
Yeah, let's do it.
Ranu and the rest of his Agori allies were reluctant to cooperate with Matanui. Since he was a stranger to them, he felt like it was all too abrupt just to let him take control of the remains of their villages. You okay, Ranu? Akar asked as he put his hand onto Ranu's shoulder. Yes, I'm fine, Ranu said reluctantly. Just concerned for the future of our people is all. As am I, replied Akar. But this is Matanui's fight, and if he wins, we'll have our villages back. Akar looked up and he spotted many creatures flood out of the robotic body Matanui is fighting. The cold stench of metal and death radiated through the air, almost made Akar gag. That doesn't seem good. Agreed, replied Ranu. There's no other choice but to fight them if they're against us. Alone? Questioned Akar. We won't last 2 seconds against those creatures. Resh walked forward and stopped next to Akar. It's what Matanui would want us to do. Akar turned to acknowledge his friend. Our Toa tools and skills alone won't take out that horde. How are us Glatorian going to take on that army?
Perhaps with our help?
Akar heard an unfamiliar voice and turned to see a brown armored figure paired with a blue armored figure that looked akin to the former. Akar readied his weapon and noticed these beings aren't looking for a fight. Akar seemed confused.
I am Gali, Toa of Water.
Akar recognized the term Gali was speaking of, but kept his weapon ready in case she was lying.
I am an elemental warrior that serves Matanui, along with my colleague Pohatu here.
Hey there.
Pohatu greeted the Agori.
I assume we're on the same side in all this.
Akar scowled at the Toa Nuva, skeptically. Are you one of the citizens of that other giant robot that is destroying our planet?
Of course not.
Assured Pohatu.
We and the rest of our team nearly died just so we could get a taste of the air here. A bit arid and harsh, but if we band together, we'll at least stand a chance against the hordes of Rakshi flooding out of our own home.
Akar lowers his weapon. All right, where do we start? Pohatu smirked and fist-bumped Akar. Matanui was struggling to stay standing in his new robotic body. Pterodax was beating him senseless for a while. He had been doing his best to dodge his attacks, but he has been struggling the entire time. He needed a leg up on Makuta. In between the blows between him and Pterodax, Matanui mentally reached out towards Tahu. Tahu, is that you? Asked Matanui.
It is good to see you, Great Spirit.
Replied Tahu through their mental link. By Tren Krom, you're alive, Matanui explained. I haven't got much time to explain. You must use the golden armor I'm about to create to defeat your enemies below my feet. I can't return blows to Makuta or I'll kill the Matoran inside his body. Matanui reached out with the Mask of Life and took some of the dead plants that were laid across the arid landscape and created golden armor out of the plants for Tahu, whom Matanui also changed back to his original body, stripping him of his adaptive armor given to him by Artaka. The golden armor was formed and about to adhere to Tahu, but he suddenly was punched out of the energy field by a large blue Skakti. I'll be taking that, teased Nektan. Tahu, in his weakened original form, tried to retrieve the golden armor, but Nektan kept pushing him away, distributing the pieces among Rakshi and Skral. A few pieces were caught in midair by Takanuva and Gresh, intervening in Nektan's efforts to stop Tahu.
Here, you dropped this.
Joked Takanuva as he gave the golden armor to Tahu.
I haven't seen you like this in a long time.
Tahu chortled.
Yeah. How long has it been? 1,000 years?
Tahu turned to acknowledge the Glatorian standing with them.
And who are you?
Gresh turned to acknowledge Tahu in return. My name is Gresh. I'm a Toa of Air, and I'm on your side in this. Matanui is my friend, and I will do whatever it takes to stop that thing and its hordes. Tahu gave Gresh a funny look, since he didn't look like any other Toa he had met before, but fist-bumped the young Glatorian anyway.
I didn't know they put Toa on this world as well. Welcome to the team, Gresh.
Gresh smiled and nodded at his new ally. Matanui was growing weary. He didn't have much power left in his prototype body. Pterodax easily overpowered him in their duel, and Matanui had to find a way to stall Pterodax until Tahu could find his golden armor. With Takanuva and Gresh helping him out, it wouldn't be as tough. However, he did still have concern for the Toa of Fire. He had no time to focus on this, however. Pterodax was his primary concern. Earlier in their fight, Pterodax shot a gravity blast at him, one of the few attacks he was able to deflect. He saw that the moon of Bota Magna was moving towards the planet. This gave Motunui an idea. He had to weaken Pterodax in order to push him into the path of the moon, which had now moved into Baramagna's atmosphere and started to turn red from the friction of the air. Pterodax was unaware of this and was about to dish out the final blow to Motunui's body.
This is the end for you.
Bellowed Pterodax. He was about to unleash a massive blast at Motunui, but he stopped short. Pterodax's attack fizzled out and he clutched his head. Motunui noticed this and looked to the ground below to see what happened. Tahu had obtained his golden armor and wiped out a massive squad of Rakshi. While Pterodax couldn't feel the pain of their deaths, it affected him nonetheless. Motunui saw his opportunity and took it. He lunged towards Pterodax and pushed him back into the path of the moon that was incredibly close to the surface of the planet. Pterodax's head grazed the moon, and Motunui let out a gravity blast of his own to stop the moon from impacting the planet. Once the Great Spirit Robot impacted the ground, a massive sand cloud was kicked up. Motunui saw Pterodax's eyes go dark, and he let out both a sigh of relief and mourning for his fallen opponent. If things played out differently, both Motunui and Pterodax could have repaired the planet as a team, as was the initial purpose of the Great Spirit Robot. However, Motunui didn't have much time to mourn for what could have been. He had a destiny to fulfill. He turned from his fallen opponent and called upon the Kanohi Ignika. On the ground of Baramagna, the intense battles began to grow silent. Tahu's attack that wiped out waves of Rakshi made the remaining enemy combatants either surrender or flee into the desert. Skakdi laid down their weapons and lifted their hands into the air. Skrull scattered towards the sands, Dark Hunters, Toa, Order of Motunui, and Glatorian, all triumphant in their efforts. Akar was binding a Skakdi warrior when he turned his focus to see Motunui, his head facing the heat of the sun. Akar regained his focus and finished up tying up the hands of the Skakdi. He eventually met back up with Kina and Gresh, all still catching their breath from the previous skirmishes.
It's finally over,
Akar said with a tired, gravelly voice.
Yeah, I didn't think we would make it for a second,
responded Kina. Look, said Gresh, pointing to Motunui. What's he doing? Motunui slowly rose his arms, calling upon the last of the energy of the prototype robot and the Kanohi Ignika. A bright yellow light began emitting from his hands, and everyone below felt the acrid air become more humid. They had spotted plants beginning to emerge from the sand. Gresh knelt down to pick one of the newly sprouted flowers, but suddenly felt a massive earthquake. Plants weren't the only things emerging from the ground. Off in the distance sprouted mountains covered in snow. Massive jungles appeared out of thin air. Clouds formed in the sky. Grass flowed in the wind like water along the once withered sands. Rivers began to flow from the newly returned ocean. Off in the distance, thunder bellowed from some dark clouds looming above the inhabitants of the newly reformed Spherus Magna. One drop of water hit the ground, then another, then another. Soon, a tropical storm covered the land, causing more plants to hastily grow out of the ground. Rain had finally hit the deserts for the first time in 100,000 years. Some Magori were frightened, others gleeful. Gresh, Akar, and Kina felt the rainwater running through their helmets. The smell of petrichor reeked in the air, a pleasant aroma, only in the air during the first rain after a long dry spell. Spherus Magna was whole once more. The Matoran, Agori, Order of Motunui, Glatorian, and Toa cheered. Some embracing each other, others going with their friends to play in the rain. Kina started to cry tears of joy.
I never thought I'd see this again.
She clutched her trident as she felt the rain hit her face. Her moment was interrupted by Tahu, still radiating golden energy from his attack that wiped out the Rakshi.
It's finally over!
Kina turned her gaze towards the Toa of Fire.
Yes, but now what must we do?
Now we rebuild.
Get down! Brace for impact! Shouted Gresh as he saw Motunui fall to the ground. Motunui fell slowly but hit the ground hard with a massive shockwave emitted from his impact. Pohatu and Onua erected a thick wall of stone, protecting them from the wave but not protecting them from the deafening crashing sound the shockwave let out. Eventually, everything fell silent and the rain ceased. The clouds parted and the heat of the sun beamed down on them once more, although not as strong as before the restoration of the planet. It was now a pleasant feeling rather than a daunting one. Pohatu, Gali, and Onua were scouting the wreckage of the Great Spirit robot and the prototype robot, searching for anyone or anything that may have gotten caught in the fight. They were only a few miles away from the robots themselves before seeing 6 strong beams of yellow light emanating from the prototype's chest.
What is that?
Asked Pohatu as he was the first one who spotted the lights. The light was almost blinding. The 3 Toa covered their eyes and turned away. Soon, the light passed and they could see again.
So, who's going in first to see what that was?
Asked Pohatu with a smile on his face. They turned their heads back towards the direction of the light, but as they did, a beam of smoke and shadow emanated from the wreckage of the Great Spirit robot, shooting towards the same spot the light landed. This made the Toa anxious and they raced towards the spot where the light and shadow landed. Pohatu was the first to touch down on the ground, and Gali and Onua followed suit. The once sand-ridden lands were now lush marshlands. Overgrowths of plants were already encompassing the lifeless body of the Great Spirit robot. The 3 Toa searched and searched for anything or anyone that may have caused the previous events to happen. They found no one for a long time. Hours later, the 3 Toa found what appeared to be Matoran. 6 Matoran, to be exact. They were laying around, almost strategically, the still glowing Kanohi Ignika. Gali approached the Matoran, holstering her weapons, and pushing one of the Matoran's chests to her ear.
This one's still alive!
She shouted.
They're all alive.
Onua replied.
We have to get them back to the others.
Quickly after being discovered, the Onumatoran slowly awoke. Where am I? Gali gently put the Matoran she was holding down and crawled toward the Onumatoran.
Safe. You're safe now.
She assured him.
What is your name?
Name? The Onumatoran asked. Gali nodded. I don't think I have one. The Onumatoran lost consciousness again and his head hit the ground, causing it to crack. This caused Onua to raise a brow. He gently moved to the unnamed Onumatoran.
How? How is this possible?
I think I know.
Responded Pohatu as all 3 Toa shifted their gaze to the mask of life. Gali's expression slowly shifted from curiosity to concern.
But what of the shadow beam? What happened to that?
The 3 Toa looked around but found nothing. Gali, Pohatu, and Onua carried the 6 unnamed Matoran as well as the Mask of Life in a set of magnetic tongs, as they did not want to get cursed by it. They touched down where Tahu and Kapaka waited for them, Liwa nowhere to be found. They didn't have any time to worry about that, however. They have 6 Matoran to tend to as well as the Mask of Life, which is still emanating energy. Tahu grabbed the mask itself, seemingly not cursed by touching it, unlike the previous wielders of it.
Who are they?
Asked Tahu, pointing at the 6 Matoran hoisted on Onua's back.
Just the Matoran that got caught in the wreckage.
Answered Onua.
They're all still alive, don't worry about that. I've just never seen anything like what this Anu Matoran did.
Onua shook his head.
Like what?
Kopaka asked. Onua was about to answer before Kina interrupted them.
Did you find him? Did you find Mata Nui?
She asked with a worried tone in her voice. Akar walked up behind Kina and placed his hand on her shoulder. It was then that she saw the Mask of Life with no one wearing it, and Kina was about to burst into tears with grief. But the energy radiating off the mask grew more intense, and a deep, booming voice echoed from the mask. "Do not cry, Kina. I'm here. I'm fine." She moved her head up from her hands, wiping tears from her face. "I am no longer needed by the people of this realm, for I have fulfilled my destiny in reforming this world. Now it is up to you. It's up to you to rebuild the world as you see fit. But only through the three virtues that the Matoran holds so dear. Unity, duty, destiny. You have fought valiantly, but now it is time to recover and rebuild. Now, my friends, I must go."
No! Wait!
Snapped Kina. She reached for the Mask of Life as the glow emitting from it ceased. Her lip quivered and broke down into tears, clutching into Akar, who tried to comfort her the best he could. Akar, also stricken by grief, wanted to say something, but decided against it until Kina calmed down.
Is he still alive?
Asked Gali. Tahu inspected the mask, looking at it closely.
I'm not sure. It seems that Matanui went dormant in the mask.
Well, what do we do?
Gali continued.
We honor Matanui. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a speech to make.
As Tahu turned to face the crowd, the 6 unknown Matoran had awakened and questioned where they were. The other Toa attended to the nameless Matoran while Tahu approached the congregation of Order members, Latorian, Agori, Toa, and Matoran. He got the attention of nearly everyone in the crowd and began speaking.
Matoran! This day wouldn't have been won without our great spirit. We will honor Matanui and all those who fought for him in our memories. But the time has come to move on. His destiny is fulfilled, but for many of us, it has yet to be written. Now that we, the Toa Nuva, have fulfilled our destiny as your protectors, we shall step down as Toa and let others rise up and fight alongside our friends, the Toa Mari. Now it is time that we build ourselves a new home, create a new future in unity.
The crowd cheered as Tahu got more enthusiastic as he spoke.
In unity, we create a new duty, and through that duty, we will fulfill our destiny!
The crowd went wild in celebration and Tahu calmed down and hushed his tone.
My friends, it is time.